warfare. Red alert, it's warfare. We mentally and physically caught in the crosshair. The fight is for the soul, so many have lost their son. They trying to change your image like women in false hair. The cross bear, the image that the lost share. Unaware Satan's declared war and all's fair. It cost their souls a fortune. The scorching 70 times hotter than the earth's portion. Caution, red alert, caution. They sizing up my people like a slave auction. I told us taking on the soul of every lost one. Run, son, better yet, retreat, son. The beast run the system for a simple reason. Control thoughts that haven't been taught is treason. Think, son, better yet, reflect, son. The rate of maximum state pen erection. The modern day enslaving of dark complexion. With this wicked prison industry out complex, son. Red alert, red alert, red alert. All I got told you, I'm calling. This is an urgent warning, because a storm is coming. Red alert, we don't need no more inequality. And we can't take no more police brutality. So when we see one time, only one thing's on our mind. Lock and load. Red alert, red alert, red alert. Red alert, 41 shots the Bronx heard, but still they let the murderers walk like clockwork. Damn if I don't wanna go make my Glock work like a slave to the rhythm of shots till cops heard. It's too late to convert when you're in the dirt facing your eternal damnation. It feel great when you send the devil.
Love, peace and love to the family. How's everybody doing today? Just want to let y'all know, man, that we really appreciate, you guys, attending to our show, the Aquarian NUR, that we just kicked off. And we need support, because I'm trying to bring you guys, man, the best speakers out here, and for you to enjoy this show, man, that we have, man, Aquarian NUR, going into this Aquarian energy. And it's like they say, it's a great reset, and it is a reset, and we need to all reset our minds. And like I said, once again, I got the best speakers, man, that's going to be on these platforms, man. So if you can support the team, because this is a team effort. It's just not me, you know what I mean? So I have a Cash App, which is $ Ali Productions. And also I have a PayPal, which is paypal.me/091765. And if you guys can support and donate in any type of way, man, we will be appreciated, man, because this is a teamwork, and all of us need to collectively come together, man, so we can get our birthright back, because it was definitely stolen. And a lot of us need to understand and wake up how it's stolen, and so we can do something about it, because it's our time, man. Peace. Everyone, assalamu alaikum, shalom, all the great greetings, peace to everybody. Today we have our brother Kemitu, and once again he's going to get in depth. We're talking about the brain trust. It's a different type of trust. He's going to educate and school us to what this is, but there's still some crazy stuff going on out here, man. And I just sit back and I just look and just see how this stuff is manifesting. Brother, Kemitu, bring him up.
Assalamu alaikum, Islam, Abarakani, Hotep, and for all those be well that's out there that's listening at this YouTube piece. You want me to go straight into it, Noble?
No, in one minute. You kind of going in and out a little bit, like your volume.
Oh, it's probably the signal, probably most likely. You know,
Yeah. But yeah, you
it's
know
the signal.
what? Okay. So how's everything up in New York? You
Well, you
know,
know, it's interesting because the other day, can you hear me?
y'all can hear you.
All right. It's interesting because the other day you was making mention about the thunderstorms that's going on,
Right.
and that's what we've been getting for the past 2 or 3 days. We've been getting thunderstorms and lightning. You know,
Yeah, right.
so that's what's going on. This weather's funny. I mean, you know, it's like thunderstorming. It's raining a little bit. The sunshine is coming out, so we got a little mixed weather going on over here.
Yeah, it's been doing the same thing here, man. Ever since Monday, it's been raining every day at the same time, thunderstorming at the same exact time. You know, like all during the day, everything be cool. 6 o'clock come thunderstorming, you know? Flooding water. You have some people that's like maybe 20 minutes up the street, they ain't got no rain. They ain't get no rain. You know, then when it rain over there, it don't rain here, man. So I think they controlling it all, man. You know, I know they controlling it all because this is not natural.
No, it's not.
Not natural, man. But yeah, let's go ahead and get into, man, these trusts, man. I want to know what's the difference with this brain trust right here because I actually never heard of it. Actually, you know what I mean. So that's why
Yeah.
I want to hear what's going on with it.
Well, I've heard about a brain trust over 20-something years ago, and with Noble Jew Ali, the noble brother, he set up what you would call was a brain trust in the form of what they call an express trust. Because what he did was those who were of sheikhs and sheikhs, those were actually your trustees. They was your trustees.
Right.
Noble Jew Ali had set up sort of like what you would call a theocracy. You know, governmental structure with some religious overtone. But again, all that was incorporated as in a form of a trust that he set up. And I was just saying to myself as I studied that history in passing, that if those Moors would have been loyal and faithful without any discrepancy when this prophet label would have been a very powerful consulate or embassy, because what this brother noble prophet set up and the functions of it was those were actually trustees, the sheikhs and sheikhs, grand sheikhs and sheikhs, those were actually trustees. And because he was operating as trustees, that means they would have to handle the fiduciary side of the temple. So you can see how the prophet set it up, because they collect what they call as a temple tax, dues. So who's responsible for that is your fiduciary. Who are your fiduciaries? Your trustees. But what was your trustees' technical names that the prophet had set into place? Sheikhs and grand sheikhs and sheikhs. These are the ones who were responsible over the temple, not just the religious ceremonies that were practiced, but also the fiduciary collection of dues to maintain the temple. You know, But there were other things that was in operation that it didn't continue because of the diversity that was going on when the noble prophet had led the rest. And so the reason why I make mention of the brain trust, because as you stated, Ali, how many of us are aware of the brain trust and what's the brain trust about? I use Noble Ali as a good example because when you look up the definition of brain trust, it's the noun, according to the parts of speech, a group of experts appointed to advise a government or politician. Again, it says here, a group of experts appointed, right, to advise a government or politician. So if you see that a group of experts is advising government or politicians, well, what type of experts are these?
Right.
And look how they use the term brain trust. Moors are supposed to operate in the same fashion. It's sort of like, it kind of reminds me of the internet. Remember the time where this government was going to war against Saddam Hussein in reference to Iraq? Remember that?
Yeah.
War? And if you pay close attention, they knocked out some of the communications of Saddam Hussein.
Right.
But because he knew there's another part of the internet, because they call it the World Wide Web. So one part of the communication was destroyed, where they reconstructed it, where it transferred the communication and continued the communication. And he was trying to figure out how that could possibly be, because it's a web. You know, like you break one part of the web, another part of the web is still operational.
Right.
So again, that's all a part of the brain trust. What do you mean by brain trust? Again, it's a group of experts, all right, who are advising government or politicians. And so now these experts have financial knowledge of trust, because everything that you see in this system that we're in is all under trust. And so they're using trust against us, and we're unaware how trust are being used because we don't know the language of trust. All right. The Social Security is an actual trust, and they got very levels of the trust that they liquidate funds into, like Title 4D of the Social Security Act. That's Title 4D. Title 4D deals with what? Child support. So anybody who's working and they're getting taxes taken out on their earnings under 26 USC section 3402, those taxes are coming out. Those Social Security taxes are coming out, and it goes into a trust. And so my point is that if people is automatically paying into the child support Title 4D, into that, why would they go after people, men or women, mostly men, for child support when that person or people is paying into that system? So they're saying, oh, you're paying into it, but they want you to pay it back. They're treating it as though it's a loan. If you notice that, they're treating it as though it's a loan.
Dirty.
But they're treating it as though it's a loan because they got to be paid back. They got to be paid back. So now you notice they're not taking it away from the mother who's applying for it. They give her the benefits for the child and then go after the father when they can find him and attack his tax returns, garnish his pay, whatever they can get their hands on to freeze his bank account, whatever they can get their hands on,
Right.
because they want to put, they want what they call as reimbursement. And so collecting those monies back is a part of that reimbursement. But what I tell brothers out there, that if you want to secure yourself with your child or your children, you have to open up what you call is a custodial account. That's another form of a trust, a custodial account. And if you open up a custodial account, what you would do, you need the baby's birth certificate and social security card. And you could open up that account, and right there, you'll take over your fiduciary duty as a dad or mom to have control over your child's financial affairs. And that's exactly what's going on with the child support agencies.
That's called a what?
The child support agency, you know, the child support, Title 4D, falls on the Title 4D of the Social Security.
No. I got that. I'm talking about the trust itself. You just mentioned it. What type of trust was this?
Oh, this type of trust is called a custodial account.
Okay.
And the reason why it's so important to have a custodial account, because at least, as a matter of fact, all parents, it shouldn't even have to be a child support thing. All parents should have a custodial account for their children. All parents. Because once you have a custodial account, it's going to operate in the same fashion as what you know, a trust. All right? And so this custodial account gives the parent the power and the fiduciary determination of the child's account, which is good, because now the parent is taking charge of the child's asset by setting up a custodial account for the child. All right? Because sometimes we think about a trust. Well, a custodial account operates in the form of a trust. It operates in the form of a trust.
So you say we need the Social Security Social Security card and
the birth certificate
of that child.
And you can open up a custodial account for that child. You can get a bank card for that child. And what's good about that is because you can make all the financial decisions in that account for that child. And when you do that, you actually remove what they would call absentee parent or obligation. Lack of obligation.
Would the parent be the trustor?
Well, yes, the parent will be acting as the trustor or the grantor or the settlor.
Okay.
I have to say those three names so people be aware that the settlor, the trustor, and the grantor are all synonyms for each other.
And who would act as a trustee in this?
Well, who will be operating as the trustee is the trustor.
Okay.
Because the trustor is the one who's operating and setting up the account for the child. The child is going to be the beneficiary.
Okay.
Because it's a custodian.
Okay.
So that's why I said it acts in the form of a trust. Right. It has certain elements and operations of a trust.
Right.
So, but once you know trust language, you would most likely identify these with different contracts. And that's what they are. They're not the private contracts. Those are really common law. Trusts are really common law contracts. A lot of people don't know that. People say, "Oh, you can open up a common law trust." You don't have to call it common law trust to say that it's a common law trust. You know, they don't have to say any of that. All right, all those trusts are common law trusts. You know, what they do to enforce it is they want to make it statutory. Each state has trust laws. Each state or commonwealth. Whatever commonwealth you're in, Massachusetts, Virginia, whatever commonwealth, or state of, like Florida, California, New York, New Jersey.
Right.
All of them have trust laws. So I highly advise our brothers and sisters out there who are highly interested in trust, protection, and asset is to look up the trust laws of the state that you're domiciled, where you're going to open up the trust at. Again, let me make this statement. Again, I've said it before and I said it again. Um, you have to know what type of trust capacity is going to operate. You want to make sure the most important thing of your trust is it going to operate irrevocable or revocable. That's the most important part of your trust. Because if it's operating revocable, that means the creditors is all going to stand at the door. It's going to act like a Chapter 7, because the revocable trust, the liquidity can come at any time, which means to liquidate the assets of that revocable trust to the creditors, that can come at any time. And you say, well, that time meaning when you default on something and you got a certain amount of money in trust, they're going to want to put a claim to that. That's why they freeze your account. They send you notice and then they freeze your account. And after so many days, they're going to confiscate whatever funds is there. That's what this is. This is how they function. And that's the revocable trust. So that's why I said the most important thing that you need to know is how it's going to operate. Revocable or irrevocable. Irrevocable means that there's no creditors that can make any claims. Even when there's a liquidity in the trust that's irrevocable, creditors cannot collect at all. So that's why it's so important to be aware of that. Another factor, again, the Internal Revenue, the agency itself, is nothing but a collection agency and enforcement agency in audit. That's what they do. So that's why I keep telling people that if you have any of these instruments that you have signed your name onto, mortgage, deed of trust, student loan, credit cards, auto loans, it is an absolute must that you get an audit. I got a client right now who want me to look into his tax. And I'm looking into it. And one thing I noticed, the notice that the IRS gave him was they was making mention about an audit and a telephone number that you can call for a hearing. They're talking about an audit. See, you know, we don't audit our accounts according to what's being claimed. And that's the most important thing. And that's why I keep saying getting an audit done on whatever that is, because all those falls into trust. They transfer the initial investment that you sign your name to, that's being transferred to a trust. And so to know who the players are in that trust, who's the custodian, right? Mm-hmm. Sponsor, who's the depositor, all right? We need to know these things. All this is in the form of the trust. You know, when it comes to the pooling servicing agreement, okay, all right, which is an agreement in trust between the loan originator who transfer your loan, who originated and transfer your loan into a trust, a master trust, and then selling it into investors, and it's generating equity. And those equities should be able to pay off the loan, and anything left over, any residual left over from the equity should be going into your escrow account. All right, and so that's why we have to go over this over and over again so our people can grasp what is going on. Is that we are actually in a brain trust. Again, I just read a definition showing that it's a group of advisors who are advising government and politicians. This is what brain trust advisors are doing.
Right.
Because they're setting up all these how would you say it? Uh, um, Financial infrastructures, but they're doing the financial infrastructures in the form of a trust. Matter of fact, a couple of days ago on the news, Biden was talking about an economic infrastructure. And in order for you to have an economic infrastructure, you have to have a brain trust. All right? Because each department or function within the trust brings it at the table. That's why they have a board of trustees.
Right.
And they bring that to the table and what's going to cost to rebuild an infrastructure in city blocks or railroad, you know. So, but the point is, the trust is a fiduciary instrument that holds the assets, and they're going to get all kinds of $1 million bonds in these trusts. In these trusts.
Right.
And so you're going to have all these financial advisors who are experts in economic infrastructure. All that is the concept of what you would know as a brain trust, or what you would call a brain trust. And I'm saying these things because this is exactly what we as Moors should be coming together. Because once we set up our brain trust, we don't have to worry about being subjective to those who want to keep us subject to the system. What brain trust means, right? It says what a group of official or unofficial advisors concerned especially with the planning and strategy. All right. What is another word for brain trust?
Another word for it, like a synonym?
Yes, yes. Think tank, right?
Yeah.
Ivory tower, workshop, and research organization. All right. Those are the other synonyms for brain trust. What was the brain trust and how did they function? Here we go. Molly, Tugwell, and Burley served as Roosevelt's brain trust throughout the 1932, you see, campaign. The purpose of the brain trust was to educate Roosevelt on current economic issues, assisting in speech writing and help the candidate formulate his own ideas on how to approach and solve the Depression. Because you know that was all back during that time of Roosevelt.
Mm-hmm.
So he had these three guys who was expert advisors, had came with a plan and a strategy in order to help the economy in the country. It took a brain trust, expert advisors to put that together. So it wasn't Roosevelt on his own. He had to have advisors. And these guys were all financial fiduciary, was what they was educated in order to create that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm saying that, Brother Ali, because we as Moors need to come together and we need to have a brain trust set up so we can create an economic infrastructure, so we can have our own schools to educate our children, so we wouldn't have to be subject to any so-called vaccines, right? We
Right.
need to have businesses, because Drew Ali had that up, you know. I read an extensive news article on this brother, this noble brother.
Mm.
Drew Ali was bringing in damn near 20 grand a month more.
Mm.
You know what 20 grand is today? A month?
He was doing that back then.
Exactly.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? So this whole infrastructure that we need, this economic infrastructure, a brain trust, a group of advisors, we need to come together, sit down at the table and plan a strategy. All right. I think one of the most powerful things we can do now is get into the blockchain banking and cryptocurrency, having our own. because that's another setup that we can do, is to be able to trade and sustain ourselves in a society without the promissory note or the fiat money. We can use cryptocurrency to trade any other currency in the world.
Everything is going that way anyway.
Exactly. And so I'm bringing these things out more. Not to say that I'm the only one that's thinking like this, but again, we all need to come to the table and as expert advisors and put together a brain trust. This is what we need to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right. Absolutely right.
So, all right. So go on, because I just gave you an example how these three gentlemen helped Roosevelt with a plan and economic strategy. How do you build a brain trust? Here's how and what these founders and I think are the top 5 tips for creating the brain trust. Start early, create a team to vet your ideas from to get go. Don't wait until you have a business model. All right. So now we have to have a team.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Diversity is the key. All right. Keep the insights confidential. Business is a priority, and create a ask and given environment. What is brain trust Great Depression? Because that can be used as a good example. Brain trust, and that was that was a little after the Prophet, because the Prophet was in 1929. He was the one who was telling people to take their monies out the bank and put them in the post office.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So the Prophet already knew. The brain trust was a term that originally described a group of close advisors to a politician candidate or incumbent. These were often academics who were prized for their expertise in particular fields. Let me give you a good example too of that, since I'm also into litigation. The judges, state, federal, municipal courts do look at law reviews coming from prestige of universities like Cambridge, Harvard, and look at what these uh, professors of law and how they are attacking certain public opinions or judicial opinions. And so those experts or those professionals in these universities, judges look to these decisions and usually make their determinations on these professors of law in these law schools. So you can look at that as those was the advisors to these judges to be making these rulings. Sort of like what you would call a brain trust, as a good example. All right. The team is most associated with the group of advisors of Franklin D. Roosevelt during his presidential administration. All right. Is brain trust one word or two? Well, we already know that it's 2 words. A group of experts, various fields, who serve as unofficial consultants on matters of policy and strategy. So we try to give our brothers and sisters some insight that this brain trust is desperately needed in the Moorish community throughout the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Start setting up some type of communication. And that's because, brain operates based upon the circuitry that flows back and forth in the brain. So what I'm saying is that there's a Moorish community in the United States, and we need to set up a brain trust where we can all function, regardless what our the differences are. as Moors, but some gonna say Moorish American, some gonna say um, Aziza Moors or Clock of Destiny Moors. I mean, you're gonna have various groups who's gonna label themselves or name themselves after what they believe in.
Mhm.
But what I'm saying is that whatever you functioning that you believe in, we need to come together and create a brain trust. And one of the main plateaus or factor for brain trust is the cryptocurrency and the blockchain banking. We need to have economic functions. Juali already gave us the science. He says it takes finance to lift a nation. So if we want to be reckoned with this country as a nation, we have to get our banking up. We have to get our banking up. We have to get our finances up.
Mm.
And so we have to build an economic infrastructure. So we're going to need some expert advisors from various areas so we can sit at the table and build this brain trust. This is what we need to do because too much division that's going on in the Moorish community throughout the United States it's going to crush us. And it's not that they are crushing us, it's we're crushing ourselves because of we allowing the diversity to be too diverse.
Right.
Nothing wrong with diversity. But again, we have to set up an economic infrastructure so that way we can have our own farms, our own factories. And the only way we're going to be able to do that, we have to set up these brain trusts. We have to set up our own monetary system. And that's exactly what the cryptocurrency is. The cryptocurrency is a monetary system.
So let me ask you this. Because you was talking about the various Moorish groups, right? So with this brain trust, of course, we would set it up with distinct Moorish groups, like say like the group that we had at Everlasting Life, right?
All right.
So that would be a group that would be involved in this type of thing, right? I mean, it'll be different type of groups within this thing, right? So, so like if you got 30 people in this group, so how would that work? Like who would be the trustor, the trustee? Who would be the beneficiaries when you got all these?
Well, very good question. First of all, we would have to set up like something like Moorish Community Trust. All right.
Yeah.
That means that we would be getting something that would be more neutral. We wouldn't want something that would lean towards one group more than the other group. We know that we have to keep it mutual. Once we can keep it neutral, then we can pull everybody in to create this brain trust. Now, the mutuality is not only going to be in name, but also going to be in the board of trustees. And so within the board, we're going to be discussing how we're going to be getting this cryptocurrency going and this blockchain banking going. We got to get our currency going. The prophet made it clear to me, it takes finance to lift a nation. And if we don't have any finances, how are we going to uplift ourselves? And as he says, no nation respects a begging nation.
Right.
You can see that already because look what's going on in Haiti.
Yeah.
In other countries that they're suffering. So again, we would have a board of trustees from each ethnic group, because then that trustee will represent that particular group that they're coming from. when it comes to the decision making
Mm.
in finances. This is all done with the board of trustees. We would set up a trust that we can all agree with. I gave you a good example, mutual name, Moorish Community Trust.
All right.
You know, we can set up something like Moorish Bankers Trust. You know, something that's just what you would call um, a name that would be all the way across the board. So there's none that would have a problem with using the word more, like in more bankers trust, more community trust, you know, developing different trusts for different functions.
Right.
You know, we can have a trust set up where we can just be building homes. Since homelessness and all these foreclosures seems to be a big issue, we can get into the business of building homes and making our own homes that we build. We make it affordable for ourselves.
Mm.
We don't need politicians and them to be determining should housing be affordable. It shouldn't be something where we have to discuss these things. Same thing with the so-called wages. All right, a man is worthy of his hire. All right, the cost of living according to the consumer price index, um, we fall behind that. These people are talking about $15 an hour and then calling it a living wage. Come on. How could a living wage be $15 an hour when the consumer price index is high as hell?
Right.
All right. And so again, this brain trust that we can sit down at the table and create something for our community, Moorish community throughout the country, we can do these things. We can do it. You know, there's too many of us that's been to school, regardless if it's a university or college, whatever, or trade school. We've been to these places, and we need to pull them all in. And the main thing we need to do is get our currency going, that cryptocurrency going. All right. Noble, it's just interesting that I am in awareness of the value of what can be done with cryptocurrency and what we can do to empower ourselves, because that'd be the first form of empowerment, is to set up a cryptocurrency for ourselves, and then we can fund whatever project we need to fund. All that is within the brain trust concept. And this is the reason why this lecture is very important. All right. Asset protection is very important.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And we got to know, what is asset protection? How in the world can you have a revocable trust and call it asset protection? That's impossible. Asset protection means that your assets are being protected. It's going to be immune from these taxes that they want to impose, or probate that they want to impose. This is exactly what's going on. And so we live in a system, or we are domiciled in the system, I should say, domiciled at a system, not in, but at. Those prepositions are very important to look at. We are domiciled at a system that's using the brain trust against us. And a lot of us Moors have no idea that we are actually, they would say the matrix, all right? But that matrix is actually the brain trust.
Right.
Like the Internal Revenue Code, all that is a part of the brain trust. The Internal Revenue Code is something that all the more should be studying, because they're misapplying these codes to us, and then calling us their taxpayer. Well, you can't be a taxpayer, because again, which is all a part of their trust. When you go to 26 U.S.C. Section 165 G3, it tells you that that a trust, or a taxpayer, excuse me, which is another form of a trust, is a domestic corporation.
Right.
So you're not a taxpayer. You may make, I would say, I will make my contributions towards the tax system so that way I can benefit. That's what you
would it be like? Because most of the people that work for these corporations and organizations, they earn wages, right?
Yeah.
Not income. They earn wages, not income.
What the problem is this, and I hear you loud and clear. That Internal Revenue Code, 26 U.S.C. Section 3402, is being misapplied. Because you're right. Because the word wages, tips, and salary should not be on the form 1040.
Right.
It shouldn't be on a 1040 form. A 1040 form, we go with the 1040 form, and they're not telling us is the 1041. A 1041. All 1040 forms is supposed to have an attachment of a 1041. Because again, if we're talking about a brain trust, we need to know what's going on with a 1041. Well, when they're talking about this brain trust, you're talking about estate planning, estate and trust planning. And that's exactly what these brain trusts is. It's estate and trust planning.
Right.
And so they put us, into these statutes and these laws as though we're subjugated. And this is the reason why Noble Drew Ali really enlightened me when he says that if we are all considered to be equal under the Declaration of Independence, there's no need for the 14th, 15th Amendment. So again, when you stop and think about what's going on in the system, they got this brain trust set up, which we would call the matrix. But it's a brain trust.
Mm-hmm.
And they create these trusts and they statutorily put you inside these trusts. Like for instance, if you was to go to 26 U.S.C. Section 7701, that's dealing with definitions in the Internal Revenue.
Mm-hmm.
So when you go and begin to start looking up Section 30 and 31, it talks about trusts and foreign trusts and estates. That's what they're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So again, we need to learn what these trust instruments is about and why are we subject into this, because we have no knowledge that these advisors or these experts was going to create this particular trust to incorporate us into these trusts.
Right.
And that's what they're using to subjugate us under the 14th Amendment, because the 14th Amendment is operating in the form of a trust, codified under Title 42 of the United States Code.
Mm-hmm.
So these brain trusts, again, is created by these experts and various academia to subjugate the people.
Right.
They have control over the people. And so we have to begin to start to identify what this brain trust is and what are we living in. Like for instance, if you own property, you are considered to be subject to what they call the societas or citizen's trust. And the purpose of this trust is for tax purposes.
Mm.
So they set up this infrastructure, this economic infrastructure, which you know as the brain trust, to continue to keep us to be subjugated. So until we set up our own economic infrastructure, it's almost like we allowing ourselves to be subjugated in a system that is structured to subjugate you anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like you don't have any other alternative in dealing with this brain trust that got over our heads. But until we create our own, brother, we're going to always continue to be subjugated to these people.
Right.
And we right now we are in the position in the forms of technology to create our own. We don't have to really be subject. You know, we got too much ahead of ourselves to get these things done.
Right. Yeah, that's deep, brother. It's real deep, man. You know.
And Ali, tonight is the first night you ever heard of the Brain Trust.
Yeah, I never heard of the Brain Trust. Now I'm looking at it all on you know, Google, and they got all type of things associated with you know what I mean, the Brain
Yeah,
Trust.
give us an example since you see it.
Okay. Example. Okay, it says on one side is the Ravens Brain Trust, not just team owner. Well, I'm just reading this.
Gotcha.
Not just team owner Steve Biscotti and DeCosta, but also team officials like Senior Vice President of Football Operations Pat Majority and Vice President of Football Administration Nick Mattel. It says Paul and Token got into the event and made contact with the president and first lady, and then the ensuing weeks, ties grew between the two, and Paul's Brain Trust and Hillary's campaign to become the next senator from New York. These are just
what you're reading is very important, because then people, if they can recognize what you're stating here, Ali,
yeah,
they're showing you how they got these expert advisors in academic fields to put people like Hillary Clinton in the senatorial position.
right.
Because they would be they'll be the same ones who's campaigning for them. Now, it's interesting because you already know and heard this before, how that Haiti was set up as a trust under the Clinton administration, and they appointed this guy that was assassinated recently in that position.
Right.
But the point is that a trust was set up.
Mm-hmm.
All right. The same thing with Biden's son up in, I think, the Ukraine. There was a big issue with his son in the position that he was holding.
Right.
You know, and I noticed they kept that a hush because that came out one time, and that was all during the time of him campaigning.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? That his son was involved also when it came to these emails between him, Hillary, you know, and Donald Trump. So, but you know, the main factor or focus of that is that these guys have expert advisors to put them in the position to subjugate our people.
Mm-hmm.
To subjugate our people, like what they did in Haiti. All right. And they're doing the same thing here. You know, so me talking about this brain trust is very, very important, because the brain trust is nothing but trust compound on top of trust. And then they're taking people and they're creating trust out of people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like Jim Crow trust. All right. Like, for instance, the birth certificate.
Right.
All right. That's the first form of trust that they got your name up under. Mm-hmm. Is the birth certificate operating in the form of a trust certificate. All right. Because you notice they use the word certificate. Mm-hmm. All right. And so when you begin to start reading certificate, especially when it comes to the Dictionary of Finance and Investment terms, you begin to start realizing how they're using and associating the definition of certificate with business. With business.
Right.
So it's very important for our people to be aware that these trusts starts at birth and death. You know, so I think it's very important for us to have this recognition and realize how these people are operating. Like, for instance, say for instance, you decide to bring a case in court over dispute of property, and they assign the case to a judge. Did you know that that case be assigned will considered to be considered to be a constructive trust? If you file a case in court, they look at that as a constructive trust. That's what they look at that as. So I know that I'm what you would say I'm all over the place, or I'm just showing you the diversity of how that a brain trust is created and how it's operated. Right? Like the function of the brain. Each part of the brain has a certain function to it when it comes to the body.
Right.
But the brain trust operates in that same mannerism and fashion. And so they created this brain trust so that way they can continue to subjugate the people. The brain trust is technically the new Jim Crow. The brain trust is considered to be the new Jim Crow. Now, there's a book that I do have out about the new Jim Crow. And I've read the book, not in its entirety, but enough to know where they're coming from. But not one time, as I was perusing through that book, that they're telling you that a brain trust is the new Jim Crow.
What's the name of that book?
The name of the book is called The New Jim Crow. I forgot the name of the author. I'm about to bring it up right now. Yeah, here we go. The new Jim Crow. Now this one is interesting because it said the mass incarceration in the age of color blindness. Oh yeah, by Michelle Alexander. Yeah, this is by Michelle Alexander, the new Jim Crow. Because they talk about the mass incarceration, but see, I have to thank Noble Juali for showing me this, Noble, because what they're defining as the new Jim Crow,
right?
Juali already defined the new Jim Crow. All right, the 14th and 15th Amendment is the new Jim Crow. They're subjugating us under the 14th Amendment. That's the new Jim Crow. They're using the Internal Revenue Code, Title 26, to subjugate us as the new Jim Crow.
Right.
All right. So they can take everything from you. So you don't have any so-called rights in a system that's saying you have civil rights. Because whatever they say that you have is what they can take from you. So my whole thing, Noble, when you begin to start looking at this system, and when they're talking about this brain trust, the deal is that we're up under a new Jim Crow system, and we need to start to change our position. And they're using legislation against us as a weapon of warfare. And so we have to create something that's gonna remove these bonds and chains off of us. All right. So
let me ask you this. So like when most of us nationalize, you know what I mean? And we're trying to come out of that system, right? So when we nationalize and do our papers, that's the form of a trust also, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right, brother. You're right, because one thing that I remember out of the Great Seal National Association of Moorish Affairs, there was credentials that we had. And I do remember the language of the credential. Like, for instance, the letter of credence is a good example.
The letter what?
I'm giving you a letter of credence.
Okay.
So when you look that up, letter of credence, we had documents saying letter of credence, and you had 9 muftis sign their name in red.
Right.
That's your jural society or your jurisprudence.
Mm-hmm.
So you're right. That is a trust. Because once you nationalize in the witness of other Moorish Americans in the community, you're putting yourself into that communal trust. So you're right. You're right. So even when we are grouped together ethnically and we do have separate views and vernaculars about Moor, the point is that as long as you belong to a community of Moors, that in itself is a trust.
Right.
So you're right. You're 100% right about that, Ali, when you made mention of that. That would be a trust, because one of the concepts of a trust is to be able to transfer the assets, to relinquish the assets into trust. So the Catholic Church, which was originally structured by us, operates under that same venue. That, and this is where the baptism paper come in, because you're identifying with a certain group to remove yourself from Negro, Black, or colored, and then you nationalize as a Moor. All right, you're putting yourself in that Moorish community trust.
Mm-hmm.
You're transferring yourself into that trust, into that community. So you no longer want to be identified with anything that's pertaining to the new Jim Crow.
Right.
So you're right when you said that that's a trust within itself. You're right, because trustees are appointed by people.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And so
earlier in the discussion, man, you was talking about you had got to talking about the audits, right? So what about a securitization audit? You know what I mean?
yes, well, the audits that I didn't say securitization audit, I should have said that, because basically that's what it is.
Oh,
Because when it comes to the student loan, the auto loan, the credit card, the mortgage, the deeds of trust, those have to be audited as securities because they was transferred as securities.
mm-hmm.
Those notes
Mm-hmm.
were transferred as securities. It was converted into securities.
Right.
So no longer a note. So that's why the foreclosure technically can the property technically cannot be foreclosed on, and they're doing that anyway, but they're violating certain laws.
Right.
Because
and that's what I'm saying. Since when most of us do go and get these securitization audits, and we realize that, hey man, we're giving these notes up, or we're giving these bills up to these companies that's not even, they're not even on nowhere in the audit. Like holding due course is they're nowhere.
yeah.
So if we, like, for instance, a mortgage, if we've been paying 10 years to a company that we shouldn't be paying it to, what way do we benefit from?
Well, again, you brought up the very factor. The audit is the key. In the audit, they have what they call it the Bloomberg. So
Yeah, right.
The Bloomberg, which is a financial terminal,
Right.
tells you what's going on with the players. It shows you the Q-sub number. It shows you the amount of money that's being generated. What is the classes? like class A, B, C, D, you know, with the ratings on it, the
Mm-hmm.
coupon, the bonds. They go into it. They'll show you who's the trustee, who's the custodian, what kind of trust it is. This is what you're going to see in the financial terminal of Bloomberg. And so you'll see the equity being generated. And then when you start going into the pooling service and agreement, there are some specifics that they make known. There's like restrictions of do's and don'ts. Like for instance, as an example, if the investment is under what you call as private placement, that means they cannot sell to the public. And that's what they do. They wind up selling to the public, and nobody had never challenged them at the Securities Exchange Commission that they're selling securities to the public.
Right.
But once you can show that they're selling securities to the public, that right there would give you your relief from your house being foreclosed or taken. Because you got to make that information known. But how would you know that if you never got an audit done?
Right. Yeah.
You know, so you brought up a very good point, Ali. That's why I keep stressing to folks, we got a network that we do audits. We get audits done, you know, because that's the only way we're going to see where the equity is at. How are we going to find that out if we don't do an audit?
Right.
So
So
in order,
once we find out from these audits though that this so-called company name is not holding due course to, I mean, you know what I mean, of our accounting. We've been paying these people. That can be that's grounds for your mortgage being dismissed, right?
yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. Because once you find out what's going on, we would write a complaint to the Securities Exchange Commission. Once we write a complaint to the Securities Exchange Commission and get a positive feedback, which you will, you have to attach that as what you call is a judicial notice of law to the court. Because once the court is aware, like for instance, say they're going to foreclose on you and you got an audit done, and we communicated with the Securities Exchange Commission, and then they look into and investigate it, and they find out that these guys are selling the securities to public as a public offering when it's not, they're going to get hit with a big violation, right? And they're going to shut them down. Once you get all that necessary information from the Security Exchange, you're going to put the court on judicial notice, because 19 and 10 is those lenders who's going to bring your stuff up into court. But if you put the court on judicial notice that this security has been shut down and that they've been hit with a fine, then that means they don't have no standing in court to try to bring a foreclosure. So to kill standing, you got to go to the outside agency and deal with them on the outside agency, and then bring it back to the court as a judicial notice that they don't have no standing to even bring a case in court. They don't even have a claim.
Right. And it appears the court still be trying to side with, you know, these fraudulent mortgage companies. You know?
You're right. You're right. And the reason why that's happening, Noble, because they're not really getting the correct challenges. Yes, they're being challenged, but the question is how they're being challenged. And that's the problem.
Right.
That's the problem, how they're being challenged. And I already gave up the procedure that once you get a securitization audit, right, you have to file a complaint with the Securities Exchange Commission and point out that they're selling public offering, the securities. Once they look into that and they see that, what's going to happen, they're going to go after them for violating the regulation, the SEC regulation, and they're going to hit them with a big fine. So once that happens, that means they got no standing. All right, you exhausted your administrative remedy to show they got no standing to even bring a foreclosure in court. Matter of fact, to even bring a foreclosure in court, they could be sued for that because they're bringing a foreclosure under false pretenses and causing.
And you know, like, not even if you about to get, not even if you about to get foreclosed. I mean, just if you just one day just be like, oh man, let me get a securitization audit. You know what I mean? And you find out some things on there. You know what I mean? I think a lot of people need to. I think a lot of people need to do this. Get these securitization audits, man, because I think probably, man, 75% of the people are getting duped.
Well, you're right, and they should get the audit done, especially with the student loans and the credit cards. They need to get these audits done. You know,
Right.
And once you get the audits done, I already know what to do right after that.
So these securitization audits, they run about, you know, how much to get that done?
Well, it varies because every audit is not the same. So, because the mortgage is not going to be the same as the student loan or the credit card. You know, so it varies. It varies. You know, but they got some audits out there that charge you $1,000, but my team, you know, tries to do it at a more reasonable price than that, especially with this pandemic going on.
Yeah, I had got one done a while back, and everything came up on that. I mean, it wasn't just. I mean, it was like the mortgage, the student loan, whatever you had.
Wow.
Everything popped up on that. Yep. So,
All right. So how long ago was that?
man, probably about 8 years ago.
8 years ago.
Yeah.
And you still have that audit?
I would have to look for it.
All right.
I would have to look for it. It was this guy. I think his name was Neil. He was out of LA. You know, but a lot of people do this. But I can't remember his last name, but he was pretty good. And the turnaround time that he gave it to us in was pretty good too.
All right.
You know. Yeah. But I'm gonna get with you. I'm gonna get with you because, like I told you before, I got something else that I'm trying to do. So
Yeah, you was telling me.
yeah, so I'm gonna
telling
need
me
that. So anything else on the brain trust, bro?
My main concern about the brain trust is that our people need to see that this is exactly what we are under a brain trust that was constructed by these same descendants of these founding fathers, but because they want to keep us in these same conditions. And so my concern is that we need to see this thing for what it is, define what it is, and look at the different trusts that they're operating under. And something that you said earlier in the dialogue, which was a very good point about nationalizing, you know, because these things can't happen. You know, people would have a tendency to think, you know, that if it ain't coming by the way of this European government, you're not it. But they can't give you something that's your birthright. That's your birthright, and you have a right to declare that. You have a right to declare your birthright, your nationality and your birthright. And there's nothing they can do or say about that.
Right.
You know, they try to ignore it, which they do. You know, that's why I like to elaborate on the Sundry Free Moor, because that case in point during the time era is what we have to look at from 1789 to 1790. So there were no 14th Amendment at the time. There were no 13th Amendment at the time, either the 15th Amendment. But these Moors knew what their position was.
Mm-hmm.
We was going to be tried. We don't want to be tried under the laws that they use to try blacks and the Negro. The Moors, they knew that. They knew that they was going to be tried up under those laws. But they petitioned the House. They petitioned the House to make sure that that didn't occur. And see, and that's something that I look at very closely, because why is Moors today not doing what our Moorish forefathers were doing then?
Right.
Why are we not saying that, you know, any more that's being tried up under the 14th Amendment is human trafficking? Is human trafficking? Is theft? Is stealing your birthright? Is stealing your nationality? That's what the 14th Amendment does.
Right.
You cannot legislate a law that's going to take away my nationality and my birthright. All right. And so this is why it's important that we declare it and that we come into ourselves. All right. We don't have to go to some agency that the European got set up to say, oh, I'm this, I'm that. No, we don't have to, because that's not our custom.
Mm-hmm.
Our custom is for us to accept ourselves and come into ourselves. That's our custom. And they can't change that. They can't change that.
And I'm gonna tell you, man, like when I hear the talk, I hear the talk of the media. I listen to, I love hearing what the media got to say about certain things when it comes to Moors. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And they say, man, they criminal, man, they this, they that. But see, that let me know when they start calling out the Moors, man, in today's time, they call them a terrorist organization. That let me know the Moors really, really doing, you know, I mean, they doing something. They putting a dent in this system, man. They've been putting work in dismantling this system right here, man. Anytime they start talking negative about certain groups, man, that mean that group is putting some work in.
Yeah.
I know you got some people, man, that do some crazy things, but I'm saying overall,
I got you.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. There's Moors out there who got good works going on that other people don't know about. And you pointed out a good point, Ali, because there's a lot of positive things. Matter of fact, you kind of remind me of quite a few years back. Sonetta had something going on at the National Black Theater, and it was Brother Reggie coming up against some more up out of Syracuse. And Sonetta stated that his son, if I'm not mistaken, teacher is a Moor. And so Sonetta was surprised that his son's teacher was a Moor. But at the same time, he was saying a lot of derogatory things, you know, and not only him, Surah Sutton City, Young Pharaoh, and there was other brothers who were saying a lot of negative things about Moors, but no root.
You know what? And that's their consanguinity.
Yeah, that's true too. But see, one thing that they taught me to know is that they really don't know. They're saying a lot of innuendos, but those same people who's making all this negative query about Moors, my question to them is, what is your nationality and what is your birthright? on why you're not perpetuating that against the birth certificate that the Europeans got up us under. All right? There's things that we address that they don't talk about. We're not Negro, we're not Black, we're not colored. Those are terms that allude to slavery, and they're not addressing that.
Right.
There's a lot of things they're not addressing, but they got so much negative things to say about Moors.
Right.
Matter of fact, Surah Sutton Seti was down in Florida, and he was around this particular Moor who was traveling on his land vessel with Moorish plates. And so it was asked of the Moor, how do you do that? But I'm saying, now you know the brother's a Moor, you see how he's traveling, you asking him how he's doing that, but yet you have something negative to say about Moors.
Hey, man.
But you don't take that same energy and put it towards the European on how he have us traveling. He's not going to talk about self-insured and having title to your land vessel other than the European. You're not going to go into it because he doesn't know. But yet he's talking negative about Moors. And I'm saying, and I noticed that the ones who talk negative about Moors really don't know nothing about Moors.
Well, you know what? I don't know about that. Just like you was talking about young Pharaoh and Seti. Well, young Pharaoh, I heard him like lately. He's been speaking a lot about law. You know what I mean? Everything that we talk about concerning law, he started to talk a lot about. So you can tell that he's looking at certain things. He's looking.
Oh, you can tell.
Yeah, you can tell.
You can tell. But the question is, where did he getting that from?
Yeah.
Yeah, I got you. I know. Listen, Noble, I'm into linguistics. So when I hear people like him and others talk, you know, I recognize the language that they're using.
Right.
And I know where they're drawing it from. So again, like I said, Noble, they really don't know Moors like that. If you notice, they don't talk about Moors who doing a lot of positive things in the society. You notice that, right?
Right.
You never hear Sarnetta saying that Surah Seti, Young Pharaoh, and others, Dr. Reggie, or Reggie, I should say, Brother Reggie, you're not going to hear them say anything positive about Moors or the positive things that Moors have done. You're not going to hear that.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And so that's why I said they really don't know. You know, only thing they're doing is filibustering with innuendos, talking all negative.
Mm-hmm.
But the question is, whatever the private issue that this particular brother or sister had in their life, that's their cipher. That's what they're going through. Everybody's going through something. But one thing I noticed that we do, we want to use that to discredit what the person's intent was. What was the intention of Noble Jew Ali? To uplift fallen humanity, right? So you see him holding up this woman walking up out of the water onto the earth. That's the picture you get.
Mm.
All right?
Right.
And so
all the humanity.
Certain lessons and teachings of Noble Jew Ali, you can see where it's positive about love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. You can see that it's positive.
Right.
You know, he's talking about how we should be upright, independent, and fearless. You know, and how we should be business orientated. You know, these are a mark of a noble brother with a noble way of thinking and talking. And so you don't hear these brothers coming onto the bandwagon speaking from that perspective. Everything is, oh, his wife was too young and he was a pedophile, and you know, you hear all kind of negative stuff. You know, and he committed this crime and he went to jail for this, and I mean, you hear all of that. You know, but you don't hear about that the Declaration of Independence said that all men are considered to be equal and there's no need for 14, 15 minutes. You don't hear that.
Right.
You don't hear that we're not Negro, Black, and color. You don't hear that. And why is it that we're not Negro, Black? Because it dilutes to slavery. We're not saying that we're not that because we just want to say that we're not that. We're not denouncing that because we could just denounce it. There's a reason why we're denouncing it.
Right.
because those are terms that delude from slavery, and it's a fact. And so you don't hear these brothers pushing those factors concerning what the Moors is addressing. They're not addressing what the Moors is addressing. They're too busy trying to knock down a Moor.
Right.
You know, a Moor want to get away from that Jim Crow-ism.
And like I said, you know, I know the reason why a lot of, I mean, this movement, this Moorish movement, it put a damper in, you know, that movement that they have going now. Their movement is strictly, man, they making money. You see what I'm saying? It's about making money. That's why they have to promote, and not to get into that, but they have to promote the black thing.
Yeah.
Hey, look, people got a lot of books out. They got a lot of videos. They make a lot of movies on black. So it's a money maker.
Oh, yes, it is, man. When you watch BET, all right, I do watch those things.
Yeah.
Right. That's not something that I constantly watch, but I do watch it from a Moorish perspective and seeing what they're projecting out to our people. Like, for instance, I'll give an example. A couple of months ago, they had the BET Awards. And what was disturbing about that, brother, was that our beautiful Nubian sisters was flaunting their rear ends, their cootie cat, and their breasts. This is what they were doing on stage. All right. And then you had some brothers who was homosexuals, who was rapping, performing their lewd acts on stage. This is what was going on. But then when it came to the gospel celebration, the gospel represent how we were 30, 40 years ago. Everybody was dressed proper. The women was beautiful with gorgeous dresses. The men had their tux and their suits, and they were singing clean, dancing clean, and dressed clean.
Right.
You didn't hear all that vulgar crap that's coming out them sisters' face.
Right.
So it was like night and day.
Right. Yeah.
It's like listening to the Clark sisters as opposed to Nicki Minaj, you know, who's talking crazy. And then all the young females are looking up to this chick because the image that the cracker is pushing her stuff out. So that's another black on black crime. You know, it's to see Nicki Minaj and other sisters flaunting themselves in a very negative way, and they expect men to respect them, but yet you don't find women speaking out against these women like that, but they're definitely speaking out against the brothers who promotes that or supports that. But
I mean, you know,
women.
That's all in the big agenda of things, man, for that to happen like that. You know what I mean? That's just like we're on social media, brother. Let me see. I had posted something on social media, right? And then they get up there and talk about false information.
Oh yeah.
You know, false information checked by independent fact checkers, right? And it wasn't nothing real big, but they still knocked it off, right? And I'm like, man, our people, man, you can see, man, look, any woman, any raunchy woman can get up on Facebook, Instagram, and show a whole body. They can even, I think, man, they can even do a sex scene and get away with it. And
I wouldn't doubt it.
And these jokers, man, won't say nothing. And
won't listen to nothing, yeah.
And our people, that can happen, and they still won't look at it like, you know, they setting us up, man.
Yeah.
We look at it like, hey, man, we can do that. More power to it, right? It's just sad to see what's going on today, man.
That is so true, though.
Real sad, brother.
Well, that's why I was saying that this lecture was really dedicated to us learning about what a brain trust is and how it's being used as a weapon of warfare against us, because we are not in these fiduciary positions to sustain ourselves against these weapons of warfare. All right. And so we have to set up our own brain trust, our own infrastructure, so that way our brothers and sisters across this country can sustain themselves against any of these issues that they're bringing against us. You know, that Internal Revenue Code book, that's the brain trust. When you go through those different titles and how it's supposed to function, that is a good example of a brain trust, is that Internal Revenue Code, which have nothing to do with the agency, because the Internal Revenue is the Department of Treasury, but the agency has been hired and operate on behalf of the Treasury. And so they're using the administrative authority to be able to uh, uh, garnish, levy, lien. This is what they do.
Right.
Because we are unfortunately subjugated under that terms. They're using these words as weapons of warfare, like the word person is a good example. And when you look into civil law, civil procedure and criminal procedure, or the penal law, you're going to see the word person. Person is guilty of, that's what they were saying, whatever it is they describe it. And if you fall under that category, they're going to say that's you. So that's not you, because you're not a person.
Right.
So you got to refute the fact that they're using language to vilify you, to put you in that same category as what they define what a person does.
But that can be used as two definitions though, right? Person.
Well, what I'm saying is the definition that I prefer to use is the definition that they use. So they can't say we confuse.
Right.
So when you go to 26 USC section 7701, look at the word person. They give you the definitions. So when they say they're a taxpayer, they're not telling you that the taxpayer is a corporation, association, an LLC, a trust, an estate, an individual. They're not telling you that. Those are the synonyms for taxpayer.
Right.
So once you start learning the synonyms, then you start seeing the language that they're using. So you're not a taxpayer.
So really that person is really, they talking about their ens legis, right?
That's right, in legis. And you're not that. They say they're a taxpayer. No, you're not a taxpayer, because you got to talk to them from the language that they recognize. So when you look at the word taxpayer, one part of the code gives you the definition that a taxpayer is a domestic corporation. Another part of the code, which is the Internal Revenue Code I'm referring to, talks about the taxpayer as being one who pay taxes. So that's a very ambiguous statement to say that one who pays taxes or the one who makes income. Income is profit or gain. So how could a salary, tips, and wages be profit and gain? It's impossible. So they took those words and put it on a 1040 form. The only time the 1040 form should be technically used is when you're using a 1041, which is estate or trust. And the way we should be operating with these people is either way, either one, estate or trust. Live in estate or trust, or live in trust. Because again, this is how they operate. And so you need to put yourself in a position where you don't need to be subjugated or regulated by these people. So they set up this particular brain trust and define people in these terms as though we are synonymous with these terms. You're not synonymous with the word taxpayer, because if the word taxpayer means domestic corporation, you're not a domestic corporation.
Right.
And here they are defining you to be something other than who you say you are. So you're not, and you're not an employee, you're not an employer, you're not self-employed. These are their terms.
Mm-hmm.
And they're using these terms as a weapon of warfare to subjugate our people. So my whole thing, Brother Ali, is to educate our people so that way they can learn the language so they won't be regulated or subjugated under terms and words that they use against us,
Mm-hmm.
which is Title 18, subsection 1001, fraudulent conveyance of language. They constantly keep using fraudulent conveyance of language to subjugate our people because they want to criminalize you.
Right, exactly.
You want, when they change, like one brother today, he called me and he's saying he's being charged with some sexual charge, and he said that he's not looking for that charge and he's a lawyer. And I'm like, I didn't really get a chance to talk to the brother like I want to in detail. I want to say, brother, they're going to give you a lawyer without question. You don't need no lawyer. You need to work on your case, and you need to tell a lawyer what you want them to do for you. But I can educate you on what you need to do because they're going to use that as a weapon of warfare against you. So I didn't hear from him at all. Looking for his callback.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, the penal law is a brain trust. The criminal law is a brain trust. The civil law is a brain trust. All right, housing law, they use these, all these things they use as a brain trust.
Mm-hmm.
And once we begin to define what this is, then we can deal with it better. Like for instance, they use your so-called residence as a process server. So if the court sends you something in mail, the only reason why they can do that because they're using the post office as a process server.
Mm.
But if you remove yourself, because you can remove yourself as a registered agent, because everybody who has a resident is automatically looked upon as a resident agent.
Mm-hmm.
And there's forms you can fill out to cancel that resident agent status.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, I have to look for the form to send it over to you.
Okay. Okay.
Because they want to subjugate you.
That's good. That's good to know.
Very good.
That's good to know. I just try to, man, eliminate myself, man, completely as much as I possibly can, you know what I mean, out of this so-called jurisdiction called the United States. You know what I mean?
Well, that's just the name they're using.
Corporations do business with corporations, right?
That's true. And as again, that's the name that they're using.
Yeah.
And that's nothing but human trafficking.
Right.
To say that I'm property of the United States and the United States got jurisdiction over me. That's the 14th Amendment. Because the 14th Amendment is an amendment that supports human trafficking. And you ain't gonna hear no more drop that like that. The 14th Amendment is being used as human trafficking because it falls under immigration laws. And anything that's dealing with immigration is dealing with human trafficking.
And they kind of, man, get you stuck in a web, man, because they try to use like statutes, laws, and codes, you know what I mean? And it keep you off balance unless you know.
Yeah. They want to keep you regulated, that's what it's called. They want to keep you regulated, like rules and regulations.
Codes and statutes is not law, right? Not at all.
Well, between me and you, Ali, they can call it for whatever they call it. I'm saying that this brain trust that these laws are set up under,
Yeah.
in the banking they're set up under,
Yeah.
because the laws and the banking system is set up under this brain trust. And so whatever they want to call it, they can call it whatever they call it. But the point is, what I'm saying is, it's human trafficking, and it steals your birthrights and your nationality. Matter of fact, you kind of remind me of a potential client. He was saying some things to me the other day, that why have I not done certain things with the birth certificate, and why I have not claimed certain claims. And I told him, my value system is different from yours. You know, Moore's is not going to be with that reparation.
Right, exactly.
All right. Reparation is the Black Lives Matter. That's their thing.
Right.
As Moors, we're not claiming reparation. We have a different type of claim. So our value system is different. So you asking me, this guy is asking me why I haven't done so and so. I said, who told you that is my square in my compass? Who told you that?
Right.
Why are you imposing what you think is valuable on me? That ain't valuable to me.
Right.
This promissory note or this fiat money, that's not valuable to me.
Right.
We're using it under threat, duress, and coercion under Joint House Resolution 192. But again, that's not value to me.
And that ain't gonna never happen anyway.
Exactly.
Never.
So I'm saying is that that's not our value system. So when you ask me, when you start asking me these questions, why I haven't done this, Chief, because that's not my value system. My value system, it doesn't lie into what you think I should be doing. See, you see how arrogant your thinking is. You think that because this is what you know to do, why am I not doing it? Well, who said that's my position to do that?
Right. That's right, brother.
You know, my value system is not the same as yours. So, you know, and he did say to me, oh, because I'm a Moor, all right? That's what he said to me. You know, because you're a Moor. If you want to say it like that, it's up to you. But my point is, my value system is not the same as yours.
Right.
All right.
Keep it going for 1 second, brother. I'll be right back. I'm drinking a lot of water.
Yeah, me too. I'm drinking a lot of water too. Matter of fact, you kind of remind me, Brother Ali, because I have a machine here. I need to show you when you get back. There's a machine here. I'm gonna send it to you by text, Ali, because you need to see this. So when you get back, this is a machine that actually pumps hydrogen gas into the water, where you can drink hydrogen water. That actually is very good for the body. It helps slow down aging process. I sent you something by text, Ali, a machine that makes hydrogen water.
Right.
You know, it goes for 500. I know more who has it, and he can come set it up for you. But it makes hydrogen water. And he also has the breathing apparatus where you can breathe in the hydrogen, because it's supposed to help. You know, it's high in antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties.
You know, brother. we're about to close out in a minute, but man, the next time I have you on, brother, you know what? I want you to do a segment on etymology, man, for real.
Oh, I'm down with that.
Yeah,
I'm gung-ho for that.
I got a lot of people, man, that's been asking about, you know, etymology, and I think that'd be a good segment to start up on.
All right. Well, what I could do, I can give a little demonstration right now as a taste.
It's good.
So that way, when they want to get on, they can see. I start off with the word etymology because etymology is a compound word. 9 to the 10, you're going to see it in the Greek because the Greeks Hellenized a lot of our ancient words when the Greeks came into power. So etymology is a compound word, etymon, which means true, and logy have veritable meanings to it, L-O-G-Y. Logic is one of the synonyms for logy. Study of, logos, all right, law, all right. Those are the various words under logy, L-O-G-Y. You got logic, law, right? Logic, law, logos. All right, logic, law, logos.
You said etymon is true?
Etymon is true.
Right.
It means true in Greek. And logi has veritable meanings or definitions. You know, like logic is, is one, law, study of, those are the terms that's under logi. So,
and I was talking with some brothers about this, and you know how it is, man. Like we get emotional when we get into talking about certain subjects. We get emotional, and you base your logic and your things off of emotion. So my thing is, I said, hey man, if you ever want to know the truth about something, you must get into etymology. It exists, even though you don't hear about it, so they want to act like it's, but first of all, they don't really know too much about it. So it really don't even matter to them. But
and the reason why, Brother Ali, the reason why is because, first of all, we all been to grade school.
Right.
We all been to grade school.
Right.
And there's nothing in grade school that teaches you anything about etymology. Etymology will fall under linguistics. Mm-hmm. And they didn't teach that as a part of your educational process is linguistics. Right. They're going to talk about part of linguistics. They're going to talk about part of it. The only part they're going to teach you is how to subjugate you as a slave mentally. All right? And that's under the parts of speech. They're using the parts of speech to subjugate you. Mm-hmm. All right? So the same brothers who have no knowledge of it, they don't know what a noun is. N-O or U-N, both are terms that refers to not or a negative. So a noun is a double negative. But look what they did to classify under a double negative. They use the word person, place, and thing. These three, all they would say idea. Those four would be classified as looked upon as double negatives. And a good example of that is the word person. And when you talk about a double negative, depending on the culture and the usage of the language, especially when it comes to this English language, they disagree with double negatives. Even though they speak in double negatives, they disagree with double negatives. Mm-hmm. So a person is connotative. So if the person is connotative, what they did is they created a negative. out of the term person.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody's explaining in detail that a person has been created as a negative. The word person,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because in the English language they removed gender. They removed gender. But where did they get this? It's coming from one of the Latin languages, persona, in propria persona.
Mm-hmm.
You notice that?
Yeah.
So, you know, so when they say in propria persona, you will hear people say, "Oh, isn't your proper person?"
Right. Mm-hmm.
I have to disagree with them, because if the person is not proper, then how could that be in your proper person? If the word person is looked upon as a negative,
Right.
because it's persona, the A makes it feminine. So they took the A off of persona and left you with the word person.
Right.
And so now they gave it a different definition. And what is that definition? They gave it to you: corporation, a corpse. So again, look how they're using the word person in the negative. So in the original, the word person was not used like that in its original state.
Mm-hmm.
It's persona. So again, they broke down the persona into a corporation, an artificial body. So these are different concepts that the constructionalist is using as opposed to the originalist. The originalist is going to keep it original. The constructionalist is going to be the one who's going to connotate the words to mean something other than what it really means.
So they just totally took the denotative words out of meaning.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm listen. I'm in desire to have this discussion with people because they don't know etymology. They don't know the language. And for you to, and how could you refute something you have no knowledge of?
So let's do this. So your next session, let's start with some basic etymology, because that I think that'd be good.
Oh yeah, I would love that, brother. Would you set it up more?
Yeah.
My goodness, man, you got me flowing mentally.
Yeah. Cause we need it. People need to know etymology, man. I mean, hey, man.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, first of all, Ali,
Huh?
The first time I've seen Abdullah on Sarnetta show about etymology,
Right.
and it really bothered me on his response, because the callers who was calling in on the chat, Sarnetta was reading those things out to Abdullah about how can etymology help us in this day and time.
Right. Uh-huh.
And Abdullah never gave a proper response to that question. That was a very good question. And my whole thing is, if I'm going to talk about etymology, I'm going to show you and others how you use etymology, how it's going to help you. See, if they got no knowledge of it and no usage of it, I can see why their questions will be the way they are.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Like for instance, as a quick example, you know, people are moving around in their land vessels. They go and they park their car. But
Right.
meanwhile, they come back to the car, they got a parking ticket. How in the hell you get a parking ticket when the meter maid didn't see you park? Ing. If the ing is a verb, he have to see you in the act of parking to get a parking ticket. But if the car's already parked, how could he give you a parking ticket if the car's already parked?
Mm.
All right. So a parking ticket and a parked car is two different vernaculars.
Yeah. Right.
So they have to throw the ticket out because it says no parking. But parking is a verb, is an adverb verb. You change the now into an adverb verb. So now you're using fraudulent conveyance of language to extort the people. So when I break that down in that fashion, then people's going to see how that etymology is being used.
Well, let's do that. Let's do that.
All right, I'm down.
They're getting us with the spelling.
Yeah, I'm down.
They're getting us with the spelling, brother. So,
yeah.
Hey, look, glad y'all, tuned in to this session about brain trust. And
yeah.
Each time we come through, we hitting the people, we hitting you guys, man, on etymology. And that's a good thing, because once you find out about etymology, man, once you go purchase an etymology dictionary and you really get
I'll hit them.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I hit them all.
It's a lot of fun learning these new terms, man. And
yes.
And then in the etymology, you're gonna realize that black and white, they mean the same thing.
That's right.
Mean the same thing. But he's gonna get into that the next session. So peace out to everybody.
Peace.
Come back to you, peace.
Peace, man. It's always a pleasure,
soon, brother.
All right.
All right.
Here we go. Warfare, red alert, it's warfare. We mentally and physically caught in the crosshair. The fight is for the soul, so many have lost their son. They trying to change your image like women in false hair. The cross bear, the image that the lost share. Unaware Satan's declared war and all's fair. It cost their souls a fortune. The scorching 70 times hotter than the earth's portion. Caution, red alert, caution. They sizing up my people like a slave auction. I told us taking on the soul of every lost one. Run, son, better yet, retreat, son. The beast run the system for a simple reason. Control thoughts that haven't been taught is treason. Think, son, better yet, reflect, son. The rate of maximum state pen erection. The modern day enslaving of dark complexion. With this wicked prison industry out complex, son. Red alert, red alert, red alert. All I got to youth, I'm calling. This is an urgent warning, because a storm is coming. Red alert, we don't need no more inequality. And we can't take no more police brutality. So when we see one time, only one thing's on our mind. Lock and load. Red alert, red alert, red alert. Red alert, 41 shots the Bronx heard, but still they let the murderers walk like clockwork. Damn if I don't wanna go make my Glock work like a slave to the rhythm of shots till cops heard. It's too late to convert.